Our next speaker is Dr. Ilan Kelman. He's a professor of disasters and health at University College London, England. He's affiliated also with the University of Agder in Norway. His overall research interest is linking disasters to health, including the integration of climate change into disaster research and health research. I'm personally been a fan of his research for a good time, and I'm honored actually to introduce him to reflect on what's going on and how he sees the future is shaping. Dr. Kelman.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Tarek, for the opportunity to be here and for organizing this, and to everyone for joining us. It really is an honor and pleasure, and really looking forward to learning so much and to seeing how we can work together in order to deal with the really challenging issues and the difficult times which we're going through, because we are in difficult times. But we also must consider how different it is for us compared to the majority of the world's population. Most of us have engaged in extensive international travel. That's now curtailed. Most of us have always expected to be able to buy what we need when we want, to go out for good food with good friends at will. This is now inhibited. Most of us expect ourselves to be healthy and energetic with solid food and drinking water each day, which so far is okay, and hopefully that will continue. But all of these are far from the reality of life experienced by most people in the world. So when we talk about post-pandemic resilience and post-pandemic civilization, for me, it is really asking, what does it mean to be human? What have we done to our society? And what will we do better? Exactly as the first speaker said, what are the opportunities and how can we grasp them? How can we move forward with them? In this sense, to me, resilience is actually the opposite of bouncing back to normal. It's the opposite of returning to normal. Not that we really know what normal means anyway, but do we really want to restore normalcy afterwards by perpetuating the mass inequities across society and the fact that a tiny minority with resources and power make decisions about the lives of everyone else without accountability? In fact, many of these elements created the conditions for a pandemic and always create the conditions for disaster. So we also recognize that people and places, the way they're set up, are actually setting the stage for many more pandemics and many other disasters into the future. So should we be aiming to return to the pre-pandemic state, which set up this disaster in the first place and its consequences? Consider also what's happening in the places which are locked down and which are continuing to be locked down. We must not dispute the thousands of lives saved by lockdown. It really has made a difference. But we also have to think about why we had to have the choice of lots of people dying or lockdown, where that choice came from. But consider, for example, the mental health consequences of being shut up for a long time and not being able to continue with the lives that we expect. Increased stress, increased self-harm, including suicide attempts, increased domestic violence, increased substance use. But all of these are poorly treated epidemics within our societies anyway. Being human should mean wanting to solve them, not stigmatizing mental health conditions, not brushing over or excluding everyday violence, and recognizing that we've created law-inflicting compensation mechanisms, which are very much about squeezing humanity out from the worker ants in order to reward those who do not need it. They have so much already, yet they simply want even more. We have constructed systems in which each year the world spends 10 times more on defense budgets, so that's about intimidating and killing people. We spend 10 times more on defense budgets than we do on the international aid system. And notwithstanding all the problems with the international aid system, at least it is trying to help people. Meanwhile, governments are using our tax money to subsidize the fossil fuel industry at perhaps, 2 orders of magnitude more than governments invest in preventing disasters, including pandemics. So what does it mean to be human? Since we are talking about civilizations, well, perhaps it means that we should be civilized. I do a lot of work on disaster diplomacy. Disaster diplomacy, seeing whether or not disasters and dealing with them can create peace. And in general, unfortunately, they do not. We see in this pandemic, people in countries using the virus and the lockdown to either pursue cooperation, which they wanted anyway, or trying to gain advantage over rivals and to ferment conflict, which is useful for them. It is a sad conclusion that disaster diplomacy simply does not work in the long term. What it comes down to is people using any excuse whatsoever to pursue their predetermined interests. And sometimes those interests are peace, cooperation, and collaboration, which is wonderful to see. At other times, it's simply about creating, continuing, perpetuating conflict without considering the impacts on us all. Even the typical vocabulary of the pandemic shows our baseline. The phrase social distancing was used at first, which is now fortunately being replaced by physical distancing, on the important premise that we must remain as socially close as possible without physical proximity, or speaking of the exit strategy from lockdown, rather than an entrance strategy to a better civilization, to a better humanity. So as a think tank, for me, thinking about resilience and pandemics and lockdown, I would ask us all, what does it mean to be human? What are we aiming for? So please join me on Twitter, join me on Instagram, discuss, propose, recommend, question, but most of all, answer. I'm looking forward to working with all of you because we are all in this together and we certainly need very long-term, very deep, very broad answers. Thank you.